Hello, beloved BlueBrixx community, and a warm welcome from Dr. Nopp. Today I would like to discuss the train gauge and also if a 6-wide train is better suited than an 8-wide train or vice versa. And we will compare it based on the decade of Lego trains, buildings and cars, right, to get a better idea. So now here we have set number 111, starter train, as we can see, push car, red wheels at the time, red wheels with ridges, as we probably can see here. Yes, ridges, and the tracks also had ridges to provide better traction. And the cars at the time were not Lego built, they were more like these model car, right? So plastic and metal wheels in one form, nothing to detach, nothing to do. I think they were licensed, right? I don't think that Lego invented those. And if we compare it, if we now take this next to the train, we have a very awkward, I think, ratio, right? So the truck doesn't even reach the base of the train. Looks weird. Looks fine, I think, compared to the gas station and the gas pumps, right? So that is in scale, I think. Also the garage doors, as we can see, they would fit this car, this kind of car, smaller than 4 white Legos. But I think, again, the car itself is fine with the gas station, but together with the train, I think it just looks a little bit odd. And then the 70s arrived, and thank God we had a great new layout of trains, right? Like this one, set 725, 12-volt freight train, where we have a nice looking locomotive. I think even for today's standard, it's great looking. We have special parts now, like these engine rods, right? Interesting part, like this one too, the bracket where the rod fits inside can only be used for that. We got buffers now, very realistic looking, I think. We have a nice coal car, and we had lots of additional wagons, like this Shell tanker, right? Fits very well to the oil refinery, which is the only one we ever got, right? Like this set from 75. And we had minifigures, right? The old minifigures. So we had tucked in arms, right? As we can see here, no one piece of legs, basically just mimicking a leg, right? But nothing to move, nothing to hold, but a minifigure nonetheless. We had road plates at the time, right? So that was great new level of gameplay, much better, I think, than the road system that Lego has these days. We had interesting looking trees, right? This kind of bush, actually it's the granulate that Lego bricks are built of, and they just basically glue them together. So interesting method. And we have cars, great cars, right? Cars like this, 4 wide now, brick built, nice little headlight, as we can see, print, right? Very nice looking car, stapler in the back as well. I like those a lot, right? So you had actually playability. We have road plates, so big step forward in the 70s. Road plates together with the car, I think, is a very nice arrangement. The Shell tanker, gas car, very nice. Yeah, but also in the 70s, of course, same gauge as we said, never changed. 6 wide rails, train also 6 wide on the base. The boiler again 4, but the compartment where the conductor sits in is 6 wide, right? And if we compare this now to a 4 wide car, I think this is a good ratio, right? This is probably very close to normal. And also if we compare the truck next to the train, I think it's a good kind of ratio. It's actually, I think, a bit smaller than reality, but nonetheless, again, if we compare it to the truck from the 60s, right, much better playability, much better realism, I would say. And then the 80s arrived. 80s mark a very big step for Lego trains, as this was the introduction of the theme, of the real train theme, with its own catalog at the time, 26 products being released on day one, and we have this beautiful train 7810 Was just a push train, no engines, but of course you could fit an engine later. And we have corresponding wagons, actually from a different train set, but nonetheless, gas tanks again, and a postal car. Very nice, very interesting. We see a unique feature, which is this little pin that's sticking out at the coupling, which is actually for the automated decoupler you could buy, but that's a different story. But nice trains, as we see, very detailed, and also completely new cars to come with, right? So we have 80s cars, classic 80s car. We have real minifigures now, as they were introduced in 78. But we can see we have a massive truck, right? As we see, it fits pretty nice, I think, right? So this actually could be a realistic comparison between a truck, big truck of course, and a train. And again, we have a 4-wide car, and the train, as usual, is 6-wide, right? So if we compare them front to front, I think it is a good size comparison. Yeah, I like it. And I think height-wise it's fine. So this is basically what we had in the 80s. We see also this little, actually it's not that little anymore, this stapler, right? Much bigger than the yellow one we saw in the other video. And we have a nice little gas pump at the end. And those funky looking trees that haunt us until today. I was never a fan of these abstract kind of trees. Never liked them. But we have them still until today. So actually I think introduced in 75, 76, something like that. Nice little Shell station. And then the 90s arrived and they brought us another new feature, which was the 9-volt system, right? So we had electronic rails, or metal rails actually, metal rails that delivered the current directly to the train motor via metal wheels, as we can see perfectly here. And we had a whole new era of trains. As we see, this freight train looks very realistic, right? It didn't change, I think, in style for today, even though I think the new ones actually look worse than this one. Then we have special trailers, detailed trailers, right, with a little rail push car that could fix thingies, a little shed, a train. Perfect kind of stuff. My best train system. I like the 9-volt system a lot. Unfortunately, you have no electronic switches or anything else that we got in the 80s. But I love the simplicity of this and the feature. And then, of course, we have some 90s cars to compare, right? I don't have too many built right now. But we have this street sweeper. Let's say that's a larger kind of vehicle, right? And we can see very nice the ratio for that car to the train, right? So I think fits very well, minifigure style. And we can also see again that we have, of course, a 6-wide train, 6-wide, and of course the part where the driver is located is 6-wide, and we have the street sweeper 4-wide next to it. So I think very nice in comparison. And at the end of 2000, Lego revamped the train theme once more after it really ran down, I think, in the 90s. So they came up with a whole slew of new items, right? A realistic looking Santa Fe Super Chief, the best train set ever, I would say. They even, we have some chrome elements, as we can see, the horns, right? Chrome elements there. Then we have a new window, a new style window, like the one you see here, which later on moved into SpongeBob's home, right? Very classic. We have silver items, right? A very great car. We have gray kind of wheel covers. Very, very nice, right? And we got this lovely train shed very interesting, very detailed. Reminds me a lot of the old fishing store, right? So very detailed, very rich. And interesting now, we have a car that is kind of a hybrid. So Lego did not yet make it to 6 wide. As we can see, we have a 4 wide car. Then basically the cabin is 6 wide, right? And the wheels extend out to 6. So we can see new road plates, right, in 2000 to accommodate 6 wide cars. So we lost a couple of studs here. But this is nice for us to compare. Yeah, to compare actually, again, the train size to this truck, right? And if we can see right here, I think a very good ratio, right? If you look at this, I think if we follow some real train videos and trucks, this is a decent size, very good to compare. And an interesting fact, which comes close to our question of 8 wide cars or trains, there is actually an 8 wide wagon that Lego produced. This one, the tanker car. Also from the early 2003 maybe. And here's the funny thing. So the train shed is 8 wide, and look what happens for an 8 wide car. It gets stuck. Oh, no, can't even get it out. Yeah, it hardly fits through, right? So even though it was built in the same year, it does go through, but you lose the connection. If we drive it through, it gets stuck and then decouples. Yeah, but an interesting thing nonetheless. So 8 wide, and if we compare that 8 wide to our truck, I think looks interesting. Yeah, looks like the truck is dwarfed, I think, a little bit, size-wise. But at least an 8 wide, the only one that I remember that Lego ever built in an 8 wide scale, coincidentally, I think, not willingly. And again, the comparison of the Santa Fe Super Chief to the truck, in my opinion, very nice. Very nice. And overall, a very nice layout, right? I like this train shed, is one of my favorite sets as well. And then the truck and the road plates, really, really interesting comparison. And I have one more. Just this big brother. Look at that baby. Massive truck from 2010, right? Massive, massive, massive. And if we compare this to the train, here we compare it, here we can. Look at this monster, right? So we have a 6 wide, or actually even 7 wide car, because the mud guards stick out, not even to talk about the mirrors, but the car itself is 6, the truck. So it's the same size or the same width as the Santa Fe Super Chief. Yeah, and I think that looks in comparison great, but somehow you see that I feel if we really compare 6 wide cars, and here's another 6 wide car, the Asylum truck, Arkham Asylum, I think again it looks a bit strange, to be honest, to see the width of the car actually being the same as the Santa Fe. Yeah. So I think here you get the first notion of, should trains be 6 wide? Again, if we put the tanker car next to the truck, I think that feels much better from a ratio perspective, right? I think that sits much better. I want to show you something else. So we have, of course, not just the Santa Fe Super Chief, we have wagons for that very train, right? And here we have, I think, the panorama car, of course 6 wide in nice little cars, but we see that we have extensions of the lights, and look at this. And if you push it, it doesn't get through. It gets stuck. I mean, if you wiggle the car, it does, but normally it gets blocked. Yeah, even though, again, same year. It does fit though, but I think, again, if we have 6 or 8 wide cars and trains and wagons and trains, of course, I mean, this could be a dangerous thing. Then you need to extend everything, right? And I must admit these doors of the train shed look a little bit crazy because they're very tall but very narrow. So I think if they would have been in 10 wide, would be good, but of course it wouldn't fit on the 32 by 32 road plate. Yeah. So next section we will discuss and compare an 8 wide train to this layout. So and finally we have a 6 wide train, right? Of course not by Lego, it's from BlueBrixx, but doesn't matter. It's a 6 wide train. Also the wooden trailer is 8 wide, and of course the tanker car, which is 8 wide. So this is a complete 8 wide ensemble. As we can see now from the front view, we have an 8 wide kind of base, 8 wide as well, but the hut itself, or whatever you call it, is 7 wide, right? But this is the layout that we have. Interesting, I think. Yeah, and if we compare this, and this is where it's getting really interesting, if we compare just the train with the regular Lego train from the 80s, we can see that the dimensions are the same, right? We have a 16 stud long Lego locomotive, and we have a 16 stud long 8 wide locomotive, right? So that is basically the same. We can compare these two, right? So you clearly see the difference. Of course, again, this is not the best of 6 wide trains, right? I think it's a very, very easy model. And here we clearly see that the comparison of the 8 wide train to the 6 wide car is, I think, a very good ratio. So if we compare the front view of both the 8 wide train and the 6 wide truck, I think this is a very good ratio, right? From a height perspective, I think that truck is a massive truck, of course, right? The US kind of long distance truck, they have a huge size, right? So I think actually this could be okay, but I definitely come to the conclusion that if you have 6 wide cars in your city, 8 wide trains make a lot of sense. Yeah, and I think, of course, you use the same base. The wheel, the gauge is the same as always, but overall, it's a very nice layout. I think fits very well to me. Yeah, it needs more space, of course, and you need to consider changing the radius of your curves, because that looks a bit crazy. If we take a top view as well, which we can see here, right, you get an idea about the size of the train. Yeah, and now we will see how that train looks with a shed. Of course, we see that the train won't fit because the base is 8 wide already, right? And then you have some extensions like these rods on the side, so for sure it won't fit. This one, of course, on the other hand, fits very well. It's made for it, right? So easy fit, no fit at all. And that basically concludes the story of 6 wide versus 8 wide train base. I hope you enjoyed this. So keep on bricking and have a great time.